So you've probably heard about the birth rate essentially everywhere, right? And I made some notes about that. And so this video is essentially just going to be strictly commentary. I will refer to some things that I have read down below, but otherwise it will be like treated as a conversational video, right? And I have my notes, and essentially what I've been doing the past few days is look into the discussion, right? So you know by now that in order to keep your population stable, you need a birth rate of 2.1 children per woman. Now, I think in 2/3 of the world, that is simply not true anymore, so populations will be shrinking. We have estimations that, for instance, China will shrink incredibly fast, South Korea as well, Europe as well. So these are regions in which we will not be expecting a lot of people to, like, you know what I mean, like to procreate. And if you look at all the videos that are mentioning this birth rate, you will essentially notice one thing. It's always about the function of every human as a taxpayer. So specifically, all countries that have the pay-as-you-go system. Now, the pay-as-you-go system is essentially a tax-paying system which funds retirees and also healthcare in the following way. They are betting that people will come afterwards. Now, that's a stupid bet, right? Because for 40 years, some countries knew they were going to shrink. That is not a secret, right? Even though there was a hysteria, I think a few decades back, in which people expected to have a lot of people and our resources would vanish, which I think also led to the one-child policy in China. This simply did not happen. And so for 40 years, some countries knew they were going to shrink. They didn't do anything about it. Now, the pay-as-you-go system is an incredibly risky bet because the moment you don't have a lot of people and the moment people emigrate and never return, that's a huge issue that you can't solve, right? And this is all in the context of every child you bring into this world as a taxpayer. And so I think what a lot of people are concerned about is the dehumanization of their children because we don't have a lot of them. And, you know, the moment you realize that maybe if you put a child into this world, it will be strictly a taxpayer, that's not an optimistic outlook into the world, right? And what else do I have? Yeah, so this was the first point I wanted to talk about, which is the dehumanization, right? So we have it in terms of taxpayers. It's also in terms of GDP. Like, I get it. Obviously, GDP is an impressive number, but it does not, for instance, care about how well you feel. That's just none of the business of GDP. Neither does it really encapsulate, for instance, how long you will live. It's just an economic number, right? And for some countries, I will say this, specifically Europe, because you're now seeing it. They were, for instance, not able to join the AI race because they have not been investing consistently for 30 years in their top talent. Their top talent always left, which is very unfortunate, but that's just true. Anyways, the discussion maybe that makes a lot of sense around the birth rate is not necessarily we need children to be able to be taxpayers, but, you know, the discussion should be centered around, is humanity even worth saving, right? Because you will shrink and you will die out as a species. Like, that's it. That's the whole story of humanity. Now, I've been thinking about it. Again, very rough notes. I'll have to check what I wrote, but I guess let's just dive into it. So here's what I have. The history of humanity is obviously in relation to, for instance, the history of our planet and the universe and other species. It's not that long. And we have been incredibly violent. We have still not reached equality. We still have not a century without war, right? We still not have a world in which we are investing into top talent in the arts and humanities specifically. We still don't have a world in which a lot of people feel secure. So I feel like these points unfortunately overshadow the rich history of humanity because we have so many cultures on the other hand, right? We have so many languages. And specifically, if you look at countries like Nigeria, they have around 500 languages. They have so many ethnicities, so much culture to preserve, right? And that is something that we as humanity should take care of, right? So our culture, specifically of incredibly old civilizations, is something that we have not been able to see anywhere yet. Like, we don't know whether there are aliens or not. I guess not. But we have not seen this culture anywhere else. And so obviously that makes us special in the sense that we are conscious, in the sense that we can create, in the sense that we can write books, write poetry, start friendships and stuff. And these things on a fundamental level, I think, are incredibly positive to think about, because they are happening at an individual level. Because think about it, right? I think that's not so depressing to think about it. Every achievement that we have as a society and as humanity in general is being pushed forward by one person most of the times, or like a selected group of a few people. These books, that you see behind me, they are essentially a one-man effort. People joined afterwards, but the spark for an idea is a one-man effort. And so I think that specifically for the very positive aspects of humanity, everybody is capable to do them. Because I have read so many books from very different parts of the world. Every book had a certain quality to it that made it special to read. And so I think, based on that, that we as humans, we are able to preserve humanity. The moment we start going into bigger organization, that's when we escalate. That's not what humanity should be doing. Like, we as humans, I think there's a magical number where we can form up to 150 different bonds, and afterwards the relationships that we have after this number, they just they can't match up in quality. They just get progressively worse. And so this is also, I think, why the moment you have huge amounts of people in a group, this is where things tend to escalate very fast. Organized violence, war, all that stuff is only possible because a lot of people have decided to, build a group. Otherwise, if you stay in your 150 group, that's not possible. And so the early history of human life, which we kind of look down upon because they were not that progressive and they were not that cultures, that's not true. They were indeed cultured. I think there is a quote by Picasso in which he is referring to the old drawings in the caves. I think he said something around the lines of, we have not progressed in the arts because the arts, if you look into the pictures, they are very impressive. Like, you can definitely see what these humans were trying to see, or maybe to tell future generations. And so unfortunately, we have lost that. We have lost these connections and also the spark to be good, because you can be the one-man effort. Like, if you want to write a book, if you want to do research, if you want to start something new, you can be the one-man effort, right? Or one-woman effort. That is possible. Nothing is standing in the way. It's just that unfortunately, because of the negative things I have talked about for human civilization, they overshadow the very positive things. And the positive things, the only advantage is that they can happen at an individual level. And so we drifted very far from the birth rates. But I think if you want to talk about the birth rates, what you should be aiming at is the preservation of humanity. Because at the very end, I think you can still argue that maybe we should preserve this spark, this consciousness to create something that is very beneficial for a lot of people, or share ideas that we think are incredibly good. That is also why, for instance, people make videos, people do presentations, people go on to be teachers. They believe they can be a catalyst for something. And this belief has led us to where we are, right? The belief that we can be better than today or the past. And so the birth rate discussion at the very end, if you can, as a government, for instance, look into people and say, hey, we know that the next generation of people that we will bring into this world might be the ones, with incredible ideas that we need to empower. Because at an individual level, they will be good people. Maybe we should bring back people together, right? Because even in early human life, hunter-gatherers, I assume, bringing children into the world was a group effort. It was not the effort that we see in nuclear families. That is not natural. I don't believe it is. And so you need to think about these values, because a lot of women, and they are very right to do so, are fed up with the idea that they will do everything by themselves. Because some studies, have showed that even though when the woman makes more than the man, even by a factor of 4, she still is doing more housework than him. So obviously that doesn't work. Like, it doesn't add up for a lot of women. And, also thinking about financial instability and stuff, it doesn't add up for a lot of people. And so instead of trying to get people to have more babies by sending them money, which also doesn't last, why not think about with your population about what it means to be a species, right? Like, what does it mean for us to be existent in 100 years from now? What does it mean for us to put in an effort to make the future look bright again? Because, at this point, it doesn't look too good, specifically with climate change and AI and all that stuff. It doesn't look too good. And so as long as you're not tackling the whole idea on maybe a philosophical level, right, and engaging with people, you will not change it. That's just it. You will not change your birth rate. And I don't think it will change it, I'll be honest, because the individuality of people, specifically who are young and still impressionable, that also sinks and decreases because of social media. Because a lot of people, they tend to pick up desires from other people based on the fact that they have seen them. That's what René Girard called mimetic desire. But that's a different discussion. So yeah, that's it. Hope you enjoyed it. Otherwise, feel free to comment. And I hope I remember to put up the sources. Until then, see you.